Do you want to watch Shedeur Sanders sit on a bench in Cleveland? Then you need Game Time. I'm only kidding. Relax. Don't be so grumpy. You never know. He might work out and become a starting quarterback. Either way, let Game Time take the guesswork out of buying tickets, whether it's playoff basketball or a baseball game outside with their friends and a hot dog and a drink. Or maybe you're a person who wants to go to a Browns game and you forgot to buy tickets and you need some last minute. Game Time has last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and all types of events. They have zone deals where you can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. They also have all-in pricing, which is a feature that makes sure there are no surprise fees at checkout, and you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy your tickets. Game Time has a lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and Game Time has ticket coverage where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. So, we got to talk about it. Shedeur Sanders, former Colorado quarterback, fell in the draft. And a lot of people thought he was going to be the second quarterback drafted in the first round. He was not. He wasn't second, wasn't third. In fact, Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, Jalen Milroe, and Dylan Gabriel were all drafted before Shedeur Sanders. Now, finally, in the fifth round, the Cleveland Browns made a move. They drafted him fifth round, 144th overall. There's a lot to say. I'm going to try to say it all. If I leave something out, comment below. Let me know what I left out. A big question we'll get to in a moment is why? Why did this happen? Why did Shedeur Sanders have a legendary fall in the draft? Now, legendary is a very important word here because Shedeur Sanders loves the word legendary. He says it all the time. There's a video of him training and throwing before the draft. And after every throw, Shedeur Sanders says the word legendary.
Legendary. Big up. Small. Legendary.
Very clearly, Shedeur Sanders was, I don't know if he still is, but he was trying to make legendary his thing. He held a party on the first day of the NFL draft during the first round, and the word legendary was plastered everywhere. Legendary. It's like his thing. At least he wants it to be. Which I think really shows actually why he fell in the draft. He's a legend in his own mind. In his head, he's legendary. Now, from a talent perspective, Shedeur Sanders is an average athlete. He's not crazy fast. He's not that big. He's got a decent arm. He's accurate, but it's not the strongest in the world. He's not bad. He's not legendary either. And so if you're going to be fairly average from a talent standpoint, you got to bring a lot of humility. You got to do a lot of other things right. And there was a very clear disconnect between Shedeur and the way he views himself, and frankly, the way his family views him. There's a disconnect between his opinion of himself and what the NFL thinks about him. And after he fell out of the first round, it was kind of a problem. And then New Orleans made a big statement in the second round. They could have drafted him with the 40th pick, and they drafted Tyler Shuck, the 25, going to be 26-year-old quarterback out of Louisville. That was a statement like, they need a quarterback. They avoided Shedeur Sanders. And eventually, we got to a point where most teams that needed a quarterback, other than Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh made it very clear, I guess they wanted nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders, but, the Giants, the Titans, teams, you'd go down the list, eventually you got to a point where it's like, hey, everyone that needs a quarterback has either drafted one or had an opportunity to draft one, and they don't want one. And the conversation kind of shifted from Shedeur Sanders as potentially a franchise quarterback to, okay, he's going to go to a team where he's a backup. For example, like the Rams could have drafted him. They've got Matthew Stafford, and they could have brought in a Shedeur Sanders to sit and wait until he's ready. I kind of like that idea. But it's clear it would have become a distraction. And with a backup quarterback, you do not want a guy who's a distraction. For example, Matthew Stafford, the Rams quarterback. If the Rams had drafted Shedeur Sanders, can you imagine how much conversation would have been had about Shedeur and how much Matthew Stafford would have had to deal with questions about it? And it just would have become a whole thing that they don't want to deal with. And honestly, I think there's power sometimes in not talking. And if you're great, I want you to show me, not tell me. I don't want to hear you're legendary. I want you to show me that you're legendary. Clearly, based on his college career, Shedeur Sanders felt that he deserved that status. He got his jersey retired at Colorado, kind of an absurd thing. A quarterback who was a good quarterback. Shedeur is not a bad college quarterback. He didn't have a legendary career, though, in college. They didn't win a ton of games. They were like, all right. And here's something Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders' dad, said before the draft. And for context, let's be very clear. Shedeur's dad, Deion, is a NFL Hall of Famer. He's a legend. Like, for real, he's legendary. He's prime time. Like, that was his nickname. He was incredible as a player. Here is what Shedeur Sanders' dad, Deion, said on a talk show, the Tamron Hall Show. Never heard of her. Show was solid. Take a listen.
But you have said that if the right team does not pick him, that you will intervene.
That's my son.
Have you told him privately who you would like for him to play for?
It's not like that.
Okay.
It's not like who I would like for him to play for. It's a couple teams that I won't allow him to play for.
So Shedeur and his dad, Deion, thought they had all the power. And look, maybe if you're a first-round pick, you're the most talented guy in the draft that everybody wants, then yeah, you got some power. Like Eli Manning back in the day made it very clear, I'm not going to the Chargers. He's Peyton Manning's brother, son of, Archie Manning. He did everything else right. He's responsible, nothing flashy. He's a good quarterback. He was viewed as a highly coveted commodity. Say what you want. Eli Manning had the ability to say, I'm not going there. I want to go somewhere else. He had the cachet to pull that off. I think Shedeur and his family thought they did. They didn't. And a guy who ultimately is not the most talented player in the draft and ended up being a 5th round pick. I think he's probably more like a 2nd or 3rd round pick from a talent perspective, but he wasn't, because of the baggage he carries, he was a 5th round pick. And someone drafted in the 5th round has absolutely no room to negotiate. Like Shedeur cannot go to the Browns and say, I'm not playing for you. You just don't have any power. And that the way things worked out. And so, and by the way, I want to say this. I think it matters. Let's take an aside here. I hope Shedeur Sanders does well in the NFL. I hope he got humbled. I think he got kind of punched in the jaw a little bit, had to take a step back, take a deep breath. Hopefully he's going to evaluate, how did this happen? What did I do? What role did I play in this happening? Because, you're the 2nd overall pick. You would have made like somewhere in the ballpark of $35-40 million on your first contract. That didn't happen. So if he's got self-awareness, I hope he's going to have his eyes wide open, take the humbling, and maybe come into training camp quiet and put your head down, get to work, and earn respect. I'd like to see that from Shedeur Sanders. But what's very, very clear is Shedeur and his family totally, completely misread the situation. They thought they were Eli Manning, and they simply were not. And it's a really bad look, by the way, for Deion Sanders. This is going to hurt the brand of the Sanders family. Like Colorado football and recruiting for Deion, I think just got more difficult. The damage to the Sanders family brand is, in my opinion, borderline catastrophic. Because the whole shtick they have is to speak stuff into existence. And it didn't happen here. You can talk and talk and talk, but if you don't back up what you're talking about, it doesn't matter. Travis Hunter was backed up. They made a crazy trade. The Jaguars said to go get Travis Hunter. That's a Colorado kid from Deion. Like, that works. But the speaking it into existence with Shedeur Sanders didn't work here. And I think there really is power, again, in showing people you're great, but letting other people do the talking for you. Other people, if you're outstanding at your job, other people are going to say you're great. You don't need to say it yourself. If you're the one kind of peacocking and showing off to everyone, at some point, it's like, well, it was a facade. It wasn't. You were telling us you were a first-round pick. You weren't, though. And there are a couple key mistakes that were made by Shedeur Sanders during his pre-draft process. And, he didn't work out at the combine. He didn't go to the Senior Bowl. He didn't practice at the Shrine Bowl. He thought he was above it, which comes across as arrogant and not taking the process seriously. One unnamed NFL assistant coach said this about Shedeur Sanders' pre-draft interview. He said, "It was the worst formal interview I have ever been in my life. He's so entitled that he takes unnecessary sacks. He never plays on time. He has horrible body language. He blames teammates, but the biggest thing is he's not that good." That's a loaded statement. He's not that good. It means he's not good enough to get away with the way he's acting. But blaming your teammates is also really bad, by the way. Not taking accountability for your mistakes is a big problem. And it shows actually that you're not very coachable, which is a huge, huge concern from a quarterback perspective. Now, Albert Breer, a writer for Sports Illustrated, wrote about what NFL teams had told him during their pre-draft process and how kind of behind the scenes on Shedeur Sanders' interviewing process. Here's one quote from the article. And by the way, Albert Breer's article is called NFL Draft Takeaways, an honest discussion about Shedeur Sanders. It's by Albert Breer on Sports Illustrated. Great article. Highly recommend you read it. Here's an excerpt from that. Quote, "A lot of times in combine meetings, teams will have a player's worst plays ready for him when he enters the room. And along those lines, one had a particularly rough interception teed up for Sanders in Indianapolis. When he was asked to explain it, Sanders didn't take blame. And as they dove deeper into it and how it might relate to the NFL level, Sanders simply concluded that maybe he and the staff he was talking to might not be a match." It's really bad. He couldn't handle criticism or coaching, and that's a massive red flag for a quarterback prospect, a guy you're considering making your franchise quarterback. Here's another quote from Albert Breer's article. "Ahead of another visit, he got an install with mistakes intentionally planted in it, done to see if a quarterback would catch them. Sanders didn't catch the mistakes, and a coach called him on it, and the resulting exchange wasn't pretty." Again, coaches were not impressed with him when they met him before the draft. No one is going to give that guy, a guy they don't like or trust and think is arrogant. They're not going to give that guy millions of dollars. That's a terrible, ill-fated investment. Again, the guy came across as uncoachable and arrogant. And when that happens, it's like, well, sorry, there's other guys we can work with. We don't need you as badly as you seem to think we do. That's a problem. Now, the Cleveland Browns, in my opinion, are totally screwed. It's a bad scenario because I very much believe that in the 5th round, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam stepped in and forced his general manager Andrew Berry and his head coach Kevin Stefanski to draft Shedeur Sanders. I think they were told to do it and instructed to make that pick. And I get the logic. I understand why Jimmy Haslam's like, this is a good idea. We got a 5th round pick that, if it fails, costs us nothing. And at best case scenario, Shedeur Sanders is our franchise quarterback. A shot at maybe having a franchise quarterback is absolutely worth a 5th round pick. I get the logic. I understand there. But, we know for a fact he basically forced the Browns to bring in Johnny Manziel and Deshaun Watson. So there's not a good track record of Jimmy Haslam forcing the Browns organization to make moves to get quarterbacks. In fact, the two I can come to mind and bring to my memory were catastrophic failures. Johnny Manziel was a disaster. Deshaun Watson's the worst NFL contract in history. It's not good when this owner specifically steps in and goes, we got to get that quarterback. That's a red flag, like ding, 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 ding. You should be concerned if Jimmy Haslam steps in and forces his football guys to make a football move. It's bad for everyone when you force a team to take a player you don't want. it's kind of an impossible position. And I especially feel bad for a quarterback, Dillon Gabriel, who Cleveland drafted before Shedeur Sanders in the 3rd round. It's just ugly and messy, the relationship between a coach who doesn't want Shedeur and a GM who was forced to draft him. And Dillon Gabriel's kind of stuck in the middle. Like, I just want to have my NFL dream and come in and work hard and have a good attitude. And now, let's acknowledge, Dillon Gabriel's not as talented as Shedeur Sanders. I thought the pick was kind of weird. I was like, it's definitely noteworthy. Dillon Gabriel, of all people, went before Shedeur Sanders, but they drafted him because, look, I think honestly, Dillon Gabriel is a future coach, kind of like Kellen Moore back in the day from Boise State, where does all the little things right, responsible, had a great career. You love his attitude. Kid you like to have in the building, you want to work with. And worst case, in 10 years, he's Kevin O'Connell coaching a team like the Vikings or something. And I really wonder what Shedeur Sanders is going to be like in training camp. Is he going to be professional? Is he going to be humble? Is he going to work his tail off? Maybe he does. Maybe he keeps his head down and works really, really hard. However, he's only ever been coached by his dad. And is there a chance he has a bad attitude, doesn't handle being coached by different people and can't get away with certain things and ends up getting cut? Like, that's on the table to me, that maybe he's got a short stint with the Browns, it doesn't work out, and they cut him. Or maybe he's really focused and does really well in the preseason, works his butt off, and it works out for him. I don't believe Shedeur Sanders is a bad guy. In fact, I'm kind of jealous of him. I think he had a really privileged childhood. He had millionaire parents with lots of opportunities I would have loved to have. But hearing him in interviews, and I don't get the sense he's like a malicious person. He's not a bad person. I think very clearly, especially with his mouth, he gets in his own way, but with his actions too. The way he acted in interviews, apparently, totally unprofessional, and you cannot act that way. He didn't act like a guy who wanted the job. I've done a lot of job interviews, especially recently. We'll talk about that someday, in a couple months. When you interview for a job you really want, you put on your best performance. You mind your P's and Q's, you say what you're supposed to say. You fall in line. He did not act like he wanted to be a first-round pick based on the stories you hear about the interview process. So he made a lot of mistakes. I'm not sure it's going to work or not. It's kind of interesting that it's up in the air. And I think he definitely gets his own way. I'm also rooting for Shedeur Sanders, though. Like, the story of him being a 5th-round pick, falling as far as he did, I think he might be insufferable if he does succeed, which is unfortunate. Like, that's a problem with rooting for a guy that's so braggadocious, is if he works out and does well, he's going to run his mouth and tell you all about it. And that's hard for me. I don't really want to root for someone who is going to succeed and then be a total asshole about it. Like, that's not a fun, I don't like that at all. But again, I find myself going, it's a tough spot. And there is a possibility he grows as a person through all this and comes out the other side humbled. And I think he could succeed. I really do. Here's what Shedeur Sanders said in an interview after the draft when he was asked about falling to the 5th round. Take a listen.
I feel like talent is everywhere throughout the draft. It's about just being picked and who sees your value. That's pretty much it, because it's a lot of valuable players that go, in the rounds after the 1st and 2nd. So I'm a product of one of those, and I understand you can't really categorize, I'll say, my talent. I just got to prove and show what I'm capable of. Understanding the route that's now that we're going to have to take, understanding that I was able to get an opportunity when a lot of people didn't want to give me an opportunity. So that's what I'm truly thankful for. So that's what fuels me.
That's a great answer. I mean, so far, early on in his NFL career, only a couple days now, but so far, he's saying the right stuff. And the guy you read about in the interview process before the draft sounds entitled and arrogant. That doesn't mean he's going to show up that way. That doesn't mean he's going to come to training camp and, be a really arrogant, entitled mess. He might actually come to training camp ready to work and with his head down, eager to earn an opportunity. And if that's how he plays this is going to go well for him. If he comes in thinking he's owed something, it's not going to go well. And I really wonder what kind of energy he's going to bring to training camp. I also, and I hope I sound okay saying this, I don't know how it's going to come across. To some degree, he's going to have to separate from his dad. Remember, his dad played corner in the NFL. And a corner, a wide receiver, you can get away with a lot of stuff. Justin Jefferson, Terrell Owens, Tyreek Hill, like the stuff Tyreek Hill does as an NFL receiver, you would not get away with as a quarterback. It does not fly. A receiver or a corner cannot act the way a quarterback does. That's just because your quarterback is a CEO, the guy you want to be most responsible and lead your team. If you got a wide receiver mouthing off and doing silly things, it's okay. Unfortunately, Deion Sanders did not play quarterback. He played corner. I think you got to, and Shedeur seems to emulate his dad. The brand, the style, the running the mouth, everything. It doesn't work for the quarterback position. I really don't believe that. So to some degree, you got to decouple from your dad and do your own thing. Build your own brand and your own identity. And make a path without the influence of your dad. And I know that's weird because your dad's a legend, but he wasn't a quarterback. And quarterbacks are different. I know he's met Tom Brady. Shedeur should call Tom Brady and ask how to handle being a late pick, what that looks like, and come in really humble. Now, you'll notice, though, Shedeur did say, I am grateful for an opportunity, and I've got to show what I'm capable of. I love that. So his career is going to be fascinating to follow. Whether it goes well or not, it's going to be very noteworthy and very interesting. Now, here is what was said during the Browns press conference after drafting Shedeur. This is what Browns GM Andrew Berry said about drafting him.
It wasn't necessarily the plan going into the weekend to select 2 quarterbacks, but as we talk about, we do believe in best player available. We do believe in positional value, and we didn't necessarily expect him to be available in the 5th round, and so we love adding competition to every position room and adding him to compete with the guys that are already in there. We felt like that was the appropriate thing to do.
Now, to me, the translation of that is the owner made us pick him. If they wanted him, they would have drafted him in the 3rd round when they drafted Dylan Gabriel. If they wanted him, they would have taken him when they had multiple picks when he was available. The answer that Andrew Berry gave was not the answer you give when you're excited about a pick that you think might be your franchise quarterback. On top of that, and this will be controversial, there's a video of when they made the pick. They do not look excited. Now, they explained why they looked that way. For the lack of excitement, take a listen. You can hear an explanation.
When we saw your guys' reaction in the war room, it just didn't look necessarily exuberant. So I don't know what we were seeing, but maybe you can explain that. And then also, how did this happen?
Yeah. I think we're probably just tired from the weekend.
Well, yeah, when they show those clips, it's not timed up to exactly the right
when
time.
We're actually
so I
making
wouldn't
a pick.
Don't read too much into that.
So the explanation is we're tired, and the clip isn't from exactly when we drafted the pick, and maybe that's true. But if it is true that Shedeur is on a team where the owner forced the team to draft him, meaning he's on a team where the coach didn't really want him and the GM didn't really want him, that's a bad position for everyone. It's really tough for Shedeur. I was once on a football team. I didn't feel like the offensive coordinator wanted me. And it didn't matter what I did. He didn't want me. And it's that dynamic is not a fun position to be in. And to be somewhere, if it's true that they don't want him, really, really is tough. Also, if it's true, then you've got a coach who's got to work with and coach a guy he's not excited about. That's a bad, bad dynamic that will not work. It's a messy, messy situation. Again, I'll say this. I said it before. If Cleveland wanted him, they would have drafted him before the 5th round. They waited and waited. They could have taken him at any moment. They didn't. That's a statement that matters. Anyone who gets to the 5th round isn't someone desperately wanted by a team. And so I'm just really, really curious to see how the story of Shedeur Sanders' career works out. Could go a lot of ways. I've got my eye on it. It's going to be fascinating.